Part 7. She Always Loves to Sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 61. Chapter 61 MRSG. Fortunately, the Chi family's old residence was in the suburbs, and they left the city after a while. Li Ju also knew that the car was going around like this, and the license plate was likely to be photographed frequently along the way. The scenery in the suburbs is less hustle and bustle in the city center and appears quiet and peaceful. You can see the swaying shadows of trees everywhere, and there is a unique beauty in the silence. The car passed through a quiet path and stopped at the door of a villa. Through the smart authentication at the door, the car can be released. The villa covers a vast area and is a typical European-style, double-story building with a classical charm, elegant and grand. A variety of precious flowers are planted in the flower beds in the yard. High-tech temperature control equipment is used to allow flowers of different flowering periods to bloom at the same time. Suddenly, the fragrance of flowers overflows, as if you are in a fairyland. Li Ju stopped the car and said to Chi Jinkai, "Get out of the car." Chi Jinkai was not in a hurry and asked, "We are all here, why don't you go in and have a cup of tea?" Li Ju unlocked the car directly and said, "I still have something to do, so I won't." At this moment, Li Ju heard someone knocking on the car window on her side. She was stunned and subconsciously lowered the window. Then he saw a noble lady standing in front of her. She was wearing an elegant and graceful tight-fitting cheongsam, which made her figure graceful and graceful. Her gray hair was tied back with a simple wooden hairpin. She has deep wrinkles on her face, but she still has a luxurious temperament. Time has deposited elegance and gentleness on her body. A pair of light gray eyes that were exactly the same as Chi Jinkai's were looking at her leisurely, full of novelty and surprise. "Lao-san, this is," the lady asked doubtfully. Chi Jinkai got out of the car, and Li Ju also got out of the car and stood in front of her. Appeared in the Chi family, with the same color eyes as Chi Jinkai, and was called Chi Jinkai's third son. The identity of the noble lady in front of her is ready to be revealed. Chi Jinkai's biological mother, MRSG. Speaking of MRSG, Li Ju has read her information before. She is a foreigner who was once a princess of the royal family. She ran away angrily because she was dissatisfied with the marriage contract made for her by the royal family. She fell in love at first sight with Mr. Chi, who was working abroad. After marrying him, she never returned to her hometown. The two have been on the same page for so many years, and their relationship is very good. Having stayed alone in a foreign country for so many years, she is also a strange woman. This strange woman was standing in front of her with scissors in one hand and mud on the other. Chi Jinkai was stunned, very surprised as to why his mother, who had always been dignified and elegant, became like this. "Mom, what are you?" MRSG reacted suddenly and quickly put her hands behind her back. "Ah, I am pruning the flower branches and turning over the soil." As she spoke, her eyes glanced at Li Ju from time to time. Chi Jinkai coughed lightly and introduced to her, "Mom, this is Li Ju, my new secretary." "Secretary?" MRSG opened her eyes wide in surprise, as if she heard something incredible. But her consistent self-cultivation made her quickly come back to her senses, and she did not lose her composure in front of Li Ju. MRSG's eyes wandered between the two of them, and she suddenly seemed to understand something. She cleared her throat and gave Li Ju a gentle smile. "Miss Li, since you are here, why don't you come in and have a cup of tea before leaving?" Li Ju frowned slightly. If it was Chi Jinkai, she could refuse. But the person in front of me is an elder after all, so it would be a bit bad if he refused. So, she could only nod and said, "Okay." The smile in MRSG's eyes became even bigger, and her eyes looking at Li Ju were particularly hot. It made Li Ju think that there was something about herself that fascinated her. MRSG led the way and kept saying to Li Ju, "In all these years, I have never seen the third child bring any girl home, and you are still the first." Li Ju laughed twice in response and said nothing. As soon as you entered the door, you heard a deep and energetic voice, "Kwewa, are you back?" Li Ju paused as he entered the door and twitched the corner of his mouth. Suddenly I remembered that the information said that after MRSG came to the empire, she followed the local customs and gave herself a local name. Named Feng Kwewa. Lately I've been doing a lot of coding and I've been feeling unmotivated. Would you like to give me some rewards to get me excited? End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 62. How long has it been since chapter 62? In the living room. Mr. Chi was holding a chess book and lying leisurely on a wicker chair, sipping tea and reading. Hearing footsteps at the Suanman, I guessed that my wife was back, so I called out. Unexpectedly, there was no reply for a long time. He sat up and looked back, and saw Chi Jinkai beside MRSG. Third brother, are you back? Then he naturally saw Li Ju following behind the two of them. Huh, this is... Mr. Chi showed the same surprised expression as MRSG. Obviously, he was very shocked by the fact that Chi Jinkai brought a girl home. After all, they know very well the cold temperament of their third child. Taking someone home? Very few things. Taking a woman home? Even more impossible. This time, Li Ju did not use Chi Jinkai to introduce her. Hello, Mr. Chi, I am Li Ju, the third master's secretary. She nodded slightly to Mr. Chi. Secretary. Mr. Chi studied these two words carefully, his eyes full of doubts. He turned to look at Chi Jinkai and asked, "Don't you never use a female secretary?" Chi Jinkai glanced at Li Ju and said calmly, "It was Mr. Li who sent her here so that I could teach her well." Li Ju raised his eyebrows and looked at Chi Jinkai teasingly. "Grandpa sent her here? Why does this sound so familiar?" Sure enough. SRTHE gossips spread by those people are not groundless. However, it's better not to expose Mr. Chi in front of him. She nodded in agreement. "Yes, Mr. Chi, it was Grandpa who put me next to Third Master and asked me to study hard with him." Grandfather? Mr. Chi caught the key word and looked at Li Ju in astonishment. "Are you Mr. Li's granddaughter?" Li Ju twitched the corner of his mouth and was a little speechless at Mr. Chi's address, but he still nodded. Mr. Chi touched the beard on his chin, a little surprised. "Tisk, tisk, tisk, I didn't expect that old man Li looked so awkward when he was young, but my granddaughter actually looks pretty good." Li Ju's eyes twitched. MRSG complained mercilessly at the side, "You still said that others are helping you? You are not good at it, you look like a crooked melon and cracked dates." Mr. Chi was a little unhappy. "Hey, what are you talking about? I look crooked, so why do you like me?" MRSG snorted coldly, "I'm blind." Then he directly put his arm on Li Ju's arm without looking at him. "Xiaoju, can I call you Xiaoju?" Li Ju nodded. Looking at her well-behaved appearance, MRSG's eyes became softer. "Xiaoju, let's stay and have dinner together tonight. But Grandpa is still waiting for me at home. If she doesn't go back, there's a chance that the old man will break her legs again." Madam Chi chuckled, "It's okay, I'll just give him a call later." After finishing speaking, she dragged Li Ju to sit on the sofa in the living room. "I felt very friendly as soon as I saw you. I want to have a meal with you." "What? Don't you even want to respect me, an old man?" Since everything has come to this point, how could Li Ju refuse again? Had no choice but to stay. Dinner is almost ready, but there are still a few dishes left. Because of Li Ju, MRSG ordered a few more dishes, which took a little longer. MRSG was a little dissatisfied with their efforts and planned to cook some dishes herself. So he said to Li Ju, "I'll go to the kitchen and have a look." Then he looked at Chi Jinkai, who was drinking tea with Mr. Chi, and said, "Third brother, come over and help me." The cold and dignified Mr. Chi seemed to be a man who never touched the spring water at first sight and had never entered the kitchen at all. Hearing MRSG say this, his thin lips tightened into a straight line, without the slightest intention to go. Seeing that he was motionless, Mr. Chi narrowed his eyes dangerously and stretched out his legs. Kicked him hard. Chi Jinkai stood up and followed her into the kitchen. MRSG closed the kitchen door, blocking the view of the living room. She turned around, not in a hurry to start cooking. Instead, he stared at Chi Jinkai dimly, with a somewhat dissatisfied tone, and asked, "Okay, third brother, when did you and Xiaju get involved? How long has it been?" Second update. Grandma Chi started to interrogate ha 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 ha. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 63. Chapter 63 So cute. Chi Jinkai rolled up his sleeves, revealing his fair skin, picked up a piece of celery in the sink, and looked at it with disgust. Obviously I don't know what it is used for. How long has it been? MRSG saw him pretending to be stupid and wanted to punch him. What do you think? You have had a girlfriend for so long and you didn't tell your family. Chi Jinkai frowned. Girlfriend? What a mess. She is not my girlfriend, Mom, you are overthinking. MRSG narrowed her eyes, walked to the chopping board, and picked up the kitchen knife on it. Under the light, the blade shone with a cold light. MRSG looked at him secretly, not believing his lies at all. If she's not your girlfriend, you brought her home? Are you lying? She is my secretary and just drives me home. MRSG narrowed her eyes. Do you think I will believe it? Believe it or not, it's up to you. With that said, Chi Jinkai turned around and left. MRSG immediately grabbed him and said, "Huh? Wait, don't leave yet. Peel the garlic for me and then chop it into pieces." Then he turned around and went about his work. The next second, there was a loud noise suddenly from behind. MRSG stiffened and turned her head to look. Chi Jinkai was holding his chin, looking at the knife deeply inserted into the chopping board with a thoughtful expression. There were scattered garlic cloves in the surrounding sinks and on the ground. MRSG. She shouldn't count on him. This son is so useless. Can't even mince garlic. Then, Chi Jinkai was kindly asked out of the kitchen by his mother. Before leaving, he said, "Go to your dad. If you dare to go near the kitchen again, try it." Chi Jinkai. Didn't you ask me to help you yourself? MRSG was almost furious. She originally wanted to take the opportunity to find out something about Chi Jinkai and Liju. As a result, not only did I find out nothing, but the kitchen was also left in a mess. So angry. This son is so useless. MRSG moved very quickly, and within a short while, the food and everything else were ready. She pulled Liju to sit next to her, and used chopsticks to pick up a piece of freshly made sweet and sour pork chops and put it into her bowl. "Xiaju, come and try the sweet and sour short ribs I made by myself. How do you like it? I haven't made it for a long time, and I'm a little rusty." Liju's eyes lit up instantly. "Pinch it up and take a small bite. The soup juice sticks to your lips, making them look even more rosy and attractive. The sweet and sour taste instantly fills your mouth." Liju narrowed her eyes slightly, her long eyelashes trembling slightly, and satisfaction appeared in her eyes. Actually, she likes sweet and sour short ribs the most. It's just that she usually behaves too blandly when it comes to eating, so even Mr. Lee doesn't know she's good at it. I have to say that MRSG's sweet and sour short ribs are really amazing. Liju, who just regretted why he sent Chi Jinkai back today, suddenly regained his composure. How could he eat such delicious sweet and sour short ribs without sending him back? In comparison, she felt that she had made a profit. How can Chi Jinkai compare to sweet and sour short ribs? Thinking about it, Li Ju felt much better. It's delicious, old lady, Grandma Chi, your cooking is so delicious. Li Ju sighed in admiration from the bottom of his heart. Hearing her name, MRSG smiled and felt her heart melt. Ouch, look, how come this child is so good? Looking at it, she wanted to steal it back and keep it. Look at the father and son eating slowly on the other side of the dining table. His eyes were filled with disgust. Tut! Look, these two people are so disgusting even when they eat. Is this a meal or a meeting in the air conditioning? Where are the fake central air conditioners one by one? She was so cold that she almost suffered from rheumatoid arthritis when she was around them every day. Turning her head, she rubbed Li Ju's head and said affectionately, "If it's delicious, eat more." Li Ju stiffened as his head was rubbed. In the past, she was the only one who got to rub others, so when will it be her turn to get others to rub her? She felt very uncomfortable being rubbed suddenly. But because MRSG makes the sweet and sour short ribs so delicious. Just let her go. Chi Jinkai's mouth twitched. Who is the kisser? Also, is that girl Li Ju worn? So well behaved? He had his head rubbed but there was no reaction at all. Looking at it this way, she seems to be in a daze. Quite cute. As soon as this idea came to his mind, Chi Jinkai's face immediately darkened. Cute. I think he was almost killed by her back then. So cute. End of third update. Third master is disliked by his own mother's strength, ha ha ha. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 64. Chapter 64. This is a good shield. Chi Jinkai thought that his eyes might be blind. Simply lowered his head and ate quietly, returning to his usual cool and indifferent demeanor. Mr. Chi felt a little sour in his heart when he saw his wife adding food and touching her head in a series of intimate gestures. Green flowers. MRSG's elegant face darkened for a moment. She turned her head and glared at Mr. Chi, and said, "How many times have I told you not to call me by this name again?" I think that when she first came to the empire, she didn't know much about the culture here. She only heard that people at that time gave her names like Shuhua, Orchid, Osman thus, and the like. I thought it would sound nice if there was a flower in the name, so I chose such a name. Green flowers. Because Mr. Chi's mother's surname was Feng, she took Feng as her surname. This name has been used for many years. After she gradually understood it, she immediately changed the name that was full of local flavor. Her name is Feng Hanking now. Why is this old man still calling her a green flower? Mr. Chi curled his lips and muttered, "Isn't the green flower nice to hear?" "What did you say?" "Nothing." MRSG snorted coldly, "Don't think that I don't remember that you were the one who told me that the name Quiwa was nice." Li Ju's mouth twitched. "Taste, is it so unique?" Mr. Chi laughed dryly, trying to hide his embarrassment, and turned to look at Li Ju. "Xiaoju, eat more. See how thin you are. Did Mr. Li not give you any meat?" Li Ju is tall and looks extremely thin, as if she could be blown away by the wind. "No, Grandpa often asks me to eat more," Li Ju said. MRSG gave her another piece of braised pork. "No, she has such a small body and needs to take some supplements." Li Ju twitched the corner of his mouth and looked at the large piece of greasy braised pork in the bowl, feeling that he might not be able to bear it. "Grandma Chi, that's enough, I can't eat much." "Not enough, look at you, you are too thin." "Li Ju. There is a kind of thinness that makes old people think I am thin." Li Ju had no choice but to take a small bite. MRSG watched with a deeper smile in her eyes. "An idea in my heart becomes more and more mature. Such a good little girl must be brought back. After a meal." MRSG pulled Chi Jinkai to the stairs. From the corner of her eyes, she glanced at Li Ju, who was sitting on the sofa chatting with Mr. Chi. She lowered her voice and said, "Third brother, what do you think of Xiaju?" Chi Jinkai was leaning on the handrail of the stairs, and the warm yellow light shone on his face, making him look much softer. He hummed a sound from his throat, "Yeah." MRSG opened her eyes wide, "Huh? What does it mean? Stop perfunctory for me." MRSG wanted to beat her unworthy son to death. She could be said to have risked her life to give birth to this old man. Of course I love him very much. But I don't know why it got crooked. You were obviously very cute when you were little, but why do you have such a bad temper when you grow up? I am already 26 years old and I don't even have a girlfriend. Does he want to wait until she is buried in the soil before thinking about life events? No. She thinks he wants to die alone. MRSG was so angry that she said directly, "I think Xiaju is good. She is Mr. Li's granddaughter. She is a good match. Why don't you get in touch with her first?" Chi Jinkai's expression did not change at all. "Mom is not forcing you, it's just that the two of you look up and don't see each other all day long. Why don't you get in touch first? Maybe you'll feel it." "Do not have time." "Why don't you have time?" Chi Jinkai glanced at her indifferently, opened her thin lips slightly, and said in a long tone, "The blind date you arranged for me before." MRSG choked up. "Forgot about this." "It's okay, those blind dates are not important. You don't like those ladies anyway, so just reject them all," MRSG said. Chi Jinkai raised his eyebrows slightly and raised his thin lips in an imperceptible arc. "It seems Li Ju is a good shield." MRSG asked again, "How do you think about getting along with Xiao Jiduo seriously?" Chi Jinkai rolled up his sleeves and said perfunctorily, "Let's talk about it later." Okay, Grandma Chi's name has been changed. You guys in the comment area yesterday were simply devils. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 65. Chapter 65, Fart quickly. It's getting late, I should go back. Li Ju stood up and said. Shall I ask the third child to see you off? MRSG asked. Li Ju waved his hand, no need. MRSG kept winking at Chi Jinkai. The latter turned a blind eye and said to Li Ju, don't be late for work tomorrow. Then he went directly upstairs. MRSG was so angry that she stamped her feet and had the urge to slap Chi Jinkai to death. Since Li Ju was still present, MRSG could only squeeze out a smile and said, it's so late, I'll ask Xiao Zhang to take you back. Thank you, Grandma Chi. The night is getting darker. At some point it began to drizzle outside. The huge floor-to-ceiling windows were half open, and the curtains were slightly raised by the wind. The raindrops fell diagonally on the ground, and some were blown indoors by the wind. Inside the house, warm yellow lights fell from overhead. Li Ju came out of the bathroom, sat in front of the dressing table, picked up the hair dryer and blew her long black hair. Suddenly, a movement. A cold light suddenly appeared in his eyes, his red lips curved into a bloodthirsty arc, and his voice was cold, you dare to break into the Li family's old house, you are so brave. The people who came were all dressed in black, with silver masks covering their faces. They were slightly wet and cold. Hearing this, the leader was stunned for a moment, then immediately lowered his head with a respectful attitude, sorry to disturb you. Li Ju continued to blow his head and ignored them. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. Those people did not dare to speak. They just stood with their heads bowed and did not say a word. Long time. Li Ju put the hair dryer on the dressing table, turned around, crossed her legs, and said with a very impatient expression, if you fart, hurry up. The leader coughed slightly and immediately said, you also know that this is a rule. Before he finished speaking, The air around him immediately became colder. Li Ju's peach blossom eyes were slightly squinted, and the ends of her eyes were colder than ever before. Slender fingers gently stroked the mole at the corner of the eye. Her red lips parted slightly, and there was a murderous intent in her clear voice. Rules. Li Ju rolled these two words on the tip of his tongue carefully. You have to know, I am the rule. So, blow it off, I don't have time to listen to your nonsense. The men in black all trembled, feeling suffocated by the breath of the woman in front of them. The leader trembled his lips and said, please tell me the details carefully. Li Ju propped up her chin and tapped her fingers rhythmically on the dressing table. Condition. She thought about it carefully. At that time, after I got the strange stone, I gave it to Lao Chi and asked her to take it back. After the auction, I went to track down the person who took out the strange stone. Unexpectedly, the car crashed and people died on the way. I found nothing. When the leader heard this, his eyes widened suddenly. That's it? They know all this? Li Ju asked, what if? I mean, do you have any more details? Li Ju was impatient, no. The leader was silent for a while, and then said, okay, I understand. Then he made a gesture to the person behind him. I'm sorry to bother you so late, I hope you have a good dream. He bowed respectfully and saluted Li Ju. The next second, all the men in black disappeared, as if they were just hallucinations. Li Ju stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, closed it and locked it. The mobile phone placed on the bedside rang. Boss, are those people looking for you? Li Ju raised his eyebrows and moved his fingers lightly. Did you ask for it? It is just 4 words, but there is a chill in it for no reason. The other side will reply immediately. Elation is by the way, how can I disturb your sleep without being blind? Het. Who sent it? Besides those old immortals, who else can there be? An icy chill flashed through the depths of Li Ju's eyes. She squinted her eyes slightly, put her fingertips on the edge of the phone and rubbed it back and forth, thinking quietly about something. 9. Since they are so free, find something for them to do. Lao Si, yes. At the same time, the old residence of the Chi family. In the study room, the atmosphere was silent. Jing Er lowered his head and waited quietly for instructions. How's it going? Chi Jinkai leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms across his chest, stared at the computer screen with deep eyes, and asked. A strange and cold voice came from the screen, the goods have been returned. Second update. Please give me rewards and vote O, V, O. The other 3 updates may be later because there are some things at home. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 66. Chapter 66. What do you think of a birthday party? Hearing this, Jing Er subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. The next second I heard Chi Jinkai say, find out the person behind the scenes as soon as possible, and then. The light gray phoenix eyes were slightly narrowed, and a dark light flashed under the eyes, which was mysterious and unpredictable. He opened his thin lips lightly, lowered his voice in a cold and bewitching voice, and coldly uttered 4 words, cut the grass and root out the roots. The person on the screen immediately replied, yes. The video was cut off. Chi Jinkai raised his eyes and looked at Jing Er. What's going on over there in Zhu? Jing Ji said, the branch we established there has been destroyed, and a lot of the weapons we ordered have been destroyed. The estimated loss is at least 30%. Jing Er lowered his head, not daring to look at Chi Jinkai's expression. 3%. It can be said to be a very serious loss. And all this is because there is a traitor in the branch. I hate betrayers the most in my life. If someone betrays me, the outcome will definitely not be much better. It can only be said that there is no hope for survival and no way for death. A clear cracking sound was heard. Jingji took a sneak peek. Chi Jinkai suddenly broke the pen in his hand. The ink stained his big hands as white as jade. But he, who has always been misophobic, didn't care at all. Chi Jinkai narrowed his eyes dangerously. The aura around him was chilling and terrifying, as if he came from the Nine Nether Purgatory. All other branches and everyone in the headquarters, look for me. Yes. A small branch leader dared to risk his life to betray the information. It means there is no one behind it? Absolutely impossible. Chi Jinkai pinched his eyebrows and looked out the window at the dark cloudy night sky. Always feel some bad premonition. First the goods were lost, and then there was a problem with the branch. What a troubled time. The other side. In the bedroom not far from the study. The door was ajar, with warm yellow light shining through and falling on the floor. MRSG was talking to Chi Mao Yi. Wei, you and the third child are usually close. Do you know that he recently changed to a female secretary? Chi Mao Yi was applying a facial mask when she heard this and said, I know. Not only do they know it, but they have also seen it today. Then what do you think of her as the third daughter-in-law? Chi Mao Yi was so shocked that her facial mask was crooked. She was very surprised why MRSG suddenly asked her this question. She straightened the mask, calmed herself down, and asked, Mom, why do you want her to be your third brother's wife? Your third brother brought her back for dinner today. I think the little girl is quite nice. When Chi Mao Yi heard this, the mask on her face fell off. Her mouth opened slightly and she screamed, What? Third brother brought Aju home. MRSG was so disturbed by her sudden scream that she had a headache and put the phone away from her ear. Tasting the two words that Chi Mao Yi just blurted out, she narrowed her eyes slightly and said, What? Do you know Xiaju? She is my best friend. MRSG was delighted when she heard this and sighed that there was such a coincidence in this world. Isn't that just right? She will become your third sister-in-law, and you two will get closer. Chi Mao Yi's mouth twitched. She felt that her mother still didn't know about the grievances between her third brother and Aju. She coughed lightly and then said thoughtfully, Well, Mom, Aju and third brother, there are some conflicts between them. Conflict? It's okay. Wouldn't it be fine if it was resolved? Chi Mao Yi laughed twice. She is so naive. Looking at the looks of Aju and third brother, I'm afraid this conflict cannot be easily resolved. MRSG was still talking, since you also know Xiaju, it's easy. Let's find a way to bring them together. Mom, wouldn't this be good? Chi Mao Yi frowned. If Aju really didn't like the third brother, then her mother, isn't it a bit self-defeating? Don't worry, it's okay. I'm just trying to bring it together a little bit. Whether it works or not depends on them. Chi Mao Yi nodded. Oh, that's right. Wei. After a long silence, MRSG suddenly spoke up. Chi Mao Yi was a little confused. Ah. What are you doing? MRSG raised a mysterious smile on her lips. It's your birthday soon, right? Ah, yeah. I'm planning to throw a birthday party for you, what do you think? Third update. I'm really sorry that I posted it so late. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 67. Chapter 67 should be yours. Chi Mao Yi's mouth twitched. Her mother really tried her best to find her a third sister-in-law. MRSG was still saying, invite all your friends over then, especially Xiaju. She particularly emphasized Liju, and the meaning is self-evident. Chi Mao Yi rolled her eyes. This was not her birthday party. This is clearly a blind date between Aju and third brother. But she had no choice but to respond, okay, I understand. The next morning. In the hospital. The single mother was leaning on the hospital bed, tilting her head and looking at the sunshine outside the window. The door to the ward was pushed open, and Li Ju was wearing a loose black hooded sweatshirt, which made her look particularly thin. She was biting a lollipop and holding a fruit basket in her hand. Shan's mother's eyes lit up instantly. "Juju, you're here." Li Ju looked at the man on the hospital bed who looked much better, with a smile on his face. "Aunt Shan, congratulations on being discharged from the hospital." The single mother was extremely excited when she mentioned being discharged from the hospital. She was ordered by the doctor not to go anywhere these days. She lay in bed every day and her whole body was getting moldy. "No, it's killing me these days." Li Ju glanced at the ward and found no one else. "Where's Shan Mingzi?" Li Ju put down the fruit basket and asked. He went to help me go through the discharge procedures," Shan's mother said. As soon as he finished speaking, the door of the ward was pushed open. "Sister Li Ju, are you here?" It really means CAO. When CAO arrived, he saw Shan Mingzi holding a few orders in his hand and looking at Li Ju in surprise. Li Ju nodded slightly. "Yeah." Shan Mingzi walked under the hospital bed, took out a few bags full of clothes, and grinned at Li Ju. "Sister, you are here. I can't carry so many things." Before Li Ju said anything, Shan's mother threw an apple directly over. "Juju has finally come to this, and you actually want her to work as a labor force." Shan Mingzi was caught off guard and was hit on the head. She looked at Shan's mother sadly. "He is not biological." "Definitely not." Li Ju twitched the corners of her lips and said, "Aunt Shan, I'm actually here to pick you up today, to move." Shan Mingzi and Shan Mu were stunned at the same time. "Moving?" Li Ju nodded lightly. Huiguan Community. Dijing is a famous villa area where rich people gather. The security here is comprehensive and the scenery is very pleasant. Li Ju brought the mother and son into a villa and handed the key to the villa to Shan's mother. The single mother waved her hands quickly, looking a little flustered, as if she had received some hot potato. She pushed and tried to return the key to Li Ju. No, Juju, this is too valuable, I can't accept it." The price of this villa is far beyond their imagination. How can they move in for no reason? So, absolutely don't want it. Li Ju put the key in Shan's mother's hand, held her hand tightly, and comforted, "Aunt Shan, you deserve this." She also knew that the place where they lived before was dark and damp, and that it was a dangerous building that was about to be demolished. Such a harsh environment is very detrimental to the condition of a single mother. Several times, she wanted to find them a new place to live directly, but she was worried that the single mother would not accept it easily. That's why it's been postponed until now. Shan's mother looked a little anxious and said, "What do you deserve? This is your house, Juju, how can we ask for it?" Shan Mingzi also said, "Yes, sister, such a big villa must be very expensive, and I heard that the villas here cannot be bought with money." Li Ju glanced at him and said, "I said, this is yours." "But..." Shan Mingzi wanted to say something else, but was immediately interrupted by Li Ju. "When I first entered Li's house, Grandpa asked Li Hong to give me a villa under his name." Shan Mingzi was startled, obviously not expecting it. "At the same time, he also gave me 5% of the shares of Li Group." Li Ju said as he took out an equity transfer document and handed it to Shan Mingzi. "This is yours too." Shan Mingzi and Shan's mother looked at each other, not knowing what to say for a moment. "So," Li Ju continued, "Aunt Shan, you don't have to be mentally burdened, just stay in peace." "Because..." A chill suddenly appeared in her eyes. She lowered her voice and spoke slowly, "Li Hong owes you this. These should be yours. I'm really sorry, I'm updating so late today. I'm really busy at home these days." I'll post the next 3 updates as soon as possible. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 68. Chapter 68. I have an idea. That's okay. The single mother struggled for a while and finally accepted the key. With a smile on Li Ju's lips, he gave the equity transfer letter to Shan's mother, and Shan, you also accept this. The name of the shareholder on it has also been changed to Mingzi. Shan Mingzi looked at Li Ju in shock. He didn't expect that she would give up the Li family's shares just because she said she didn't want them. But after thinking about it again, I thought it was nothing. After all, even the MZ belongs to her. How could she care about this small share? When Shan's mother saw Li Ju doing this, her eyes turned red instantly, her expression was a little moved, and her voice was slightly hoarse. Xiaoju, thank you so much. Without her, mother and son simply don't know what they would do. Maybe he will stay in that isolated village. Will never come to the imperial capital. Li Ju helped Shan Mu sit down on the sofa, took out a tissue and handed it to her. Shan Mingzi also patted her back gently and comforted her. Okay, Mom, everything will be fine. Shan Mu wiped the tears that overflowed from the corners of her eyes and nodded, yes, everything will be fine, that is. As she spoke, her tears fell down like broken beads. The single mother covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. Chalked and painful sounds came intermittently from the seams in the palms. It's just a pity Xiao. Hearing this, both Li Ju and Shan Mingzi fell silent. The atmosphere gradually became sad. In the huge villa, only the mournful sobs of the single mother echoed. Shan Mingzi's hands hanging by his sides were clenched into fists, and he was biting his back teeth fiercely, as if he was trying his best to suppress his emotions. Half a while. Li Ju suddenly stood up and said lightly to Shan Mingzi, follow me. Shan Mingzi was startled and immediately followed her footsteps. Li Ju took him to the study room on the second floor. The furnishings are simple, clean, and tidy. The incense burner on the table blew out curls of smoke. The study room is filled with the faint scent of sandalwood. Li Ju signaled Shan Mingzi to close the door, and then asked, how are you doing in MZ? Shan Mingzi said, it's pretty good. Li Ju didn't have much surprise. After all, she had specifically greeted the people in the Human Resources Department and asked them to take care of Shan Mingzi. If he can't even do this, that person doesn't need to stay in MZ. Shan Mingzi continued, I don't have much work in normal times now. I just help everyone print some documents and so on. It's quite easy. Li Ju nodded and suddenly looked at him with an unclear look in his eyes. What if I say that I will let you go to the Li family in the future? Ah! Shan Mingzi raised his head in surprise and looked at Li Ju, his eyes full of doubts. Obviously he didn't understand what she meant. Li Ju raised the corners of her lips, narrowed her eyes, and said to him, Mingzi, I have an idea. Shan Mingzi and Li Ju talked for a long time in the study. When I came down, I happened to see Shan Mu wearing an apron and bringing a plate of dishes to the table. Seeing the two of them coming down, Dan's mother waved, are you done talking? Come on, I just made breakfast. Listening to the tone, I have already recovered from the grief just now. The two looked at each other and came to the dining table. Mom, where did you get these dishes? Shan Mingzi asked. Shan Mu smiled and said, I originally wanted to see what was in the villa, but I found out that there are still fresh ingredients in the refrigerator. I thought you guys must not have eaten yet so early in the morning, so I simply made some hurry, eat it while it's hot. Although this villa has always been empty, someone will come to clean it regularly and add some fresh food. These foods are replaced regularly and a lot of them go to waste. The single mother has made the best use of her resources today. Okay, then I'm welcome. Shan Mingzi clapped his hands excitedly. Hurriedly sat down, picked up the bowl and chopsticks, and took a big mouthful of food, for fear that he would not be able to grab it if it was too late. There is no other way, Shan Mu's craftsmanship is really good. It's just that I'm not in good health and don't cook often. Today I can finally taste her cooking. If I don't grab it quickly, it will be gone. Jeju, why are you still standing? Sit down quickly. I will cook today to celebrate my discharge from the hospital. Shan's mother pulled Liju to sit down. Liju raised her lips and smiled softly, with warmth in her eyes. Good. Suddenly, the mobile phone rang. Secretary Lee, it's already past 9 o'clock. Are you going to be late for work the next day? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 69. Chapter 69. Just wait for me. The indifferent tone said something that deserved a beating. There is no doubt that it is Chi Jinkai. Liju rubbed his teeth, and the breath around him suddenly dropped. This man is really haunted. I know, I'll be there soon. Liju cut off the phone without waiting for Chi Jinkai's reaction. Sister, who is it? Shan Mingzi asked, biting her chopsticks. He observed Liju's momentarily gloomy expression and felt a little incredible. There are actually people in this world who can change Liju's face. What an ancient anecdote. Liju gritted his teeth and looked very ugly. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. A creditor. Credit. Shan Mingzi was surprised. Liju was the big boss of the MZ consortium. What kind of creditor could he have? In other words, who would be her creditor? Before he could clear up the doubts in his mind, Liju stood up and said, Aunt Shan, I have something else to do, so I won't eat for now. Well. Liju had already walked out before Shan's mother could react. Hey, Jeju, it's bad for your appetite if you don't eat breakfast. Why don't you take a bite? However, Liju had already walked far away and did not hear her words at all. Secretary Lee, you dare to hang up on me, you are very courageous. Liju hummed, I'm quite brave. She also specifically added, oh, some people said I was very brave before. Liju thought for a moment and concluded, well, it's big and fat. Chi Jinkai. Chi Jinkai felt that he must not talk too much to this woman. Otherwise you will be off. I give you 10 minutes to arrive at the company, otherwise you will be responsible for the consequences. Liju stretched out her little finger to pick out her ears and said nonchalantly, I'm quite curious about the consequences. On the other end of the phone, Chi Jinkai took a breath and narrowed his eyes dangerously. After a while, he curled his thin lips slightly and said, then I can only unfortunately explain your situation to Mr. Li. Liju's body paused slightly. Suddenly he realized that behind Chi Jinkai there was Mr. Li, a great supporter. She spat hard in her heart. She can't help it, so she goes to find a backer? Can you still be a little bit like the third master Chi of the imperial capital? What is the difference between this and suing the parents if you can't beat someone? Childish, vindictive, and stingy. Liju gritted her teeth and said word by word, just wait for me. Chi Jinkai said, well, just waiting. Then, he cut off the phone. Liju. She snorted coldly, put her cell phone in her pocket, and set it to silent. Out of sight, out of mind. No one who called her was a good person. Huiguan community is very far away from senior, let alone 10 minutes, even if it takes half an hour, I don't know if we can get there. What's more, it's peak working hours now. It took Liju an hour to reach the gate of SR. However, there was no anxiety in her heart. Hands behind his head, walking slowly, with a lollipop in his mouth. That look was extremely leisurely and casual. Liju's peach blossom eyes are so exquisite, coupled with her stunning face, she received countless stunning glances the moment she stepped through the gate of SR. But the next second, all those gazes disappeared, and everyone was doing what they were supposed to do. Even the young lady at the front desk lowered her head and was busy working. Li Ju raised his eyebrows lightly. Everyone said that SR was the leading company in Imperial Capital. Looking at it now, it is indeed well deserved. Even the lowest level employees are so busy at work. Let alone the top management. Especially Qi Jinkai. I have to say that Qi Jinkai reminded her of the emperors who had to go to court every day in ancient times. Taking care of everything every day. Just look at his daily workload. Although she only followed him for one day yesterday. But yesterday alone, Qi Jinkai read countless documents and rejected several plans. There was also a 4-hour video conference. Qi Jinkai is the only one who can do such a difficult and high concentration job. No wonder everyone in the imperial capital says that Mr. Qi lives in seclusion. He has so much work that he can't even think about getting out. Okay. Boss Li, who has never been concerned about his own company's affairs, was rarely reflective. Perhaps I am a little too relaxed. It is too relaxed, to control the people below. They should be given a little more work. Li Ju looked at the SR employees who were in a hurry. Thinking about how great it would be if MZ employees could have this kind of atmosphere. At this moment, an inappropriate voice suddenly came from behind. Elder sister. The third update, the scumbag girl appears, but she is here to assist. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfei. Chapter 71. Chapter 71, Come back and rob the company with him. Li Yun rushed to the front desk, grabbed the man's shoulders, and asked excitedly, why can she enter the president's elevator? Why? That can use the executive elevator. But she had to wait here for several hours. The receptionist was startled by her actions, and then frowned, realizing that she was talking about Li Ju. He calmly brushed away Li Yun's hand holding her shoulder and said, she is the president's new secretary. The president has granted her permission to use the president's special elevator. What? Li Yun had a look of disbelief on his face, and the fingers holding the document turned white. Recalling what Li Ju said just now, I understood everything instantly. So, it was Mr. Li who pushed her to SR? Li Yun's face suddenly darkened, and his eyes became sinister. What a partial grandpa! What did he say when she was about to join the Li family? Said that she is still young and may not be able to do this position well. Ask her to wait, don't rush. But what now? But he pushed Li Ju directly to Qi Jinkai's side. That is the secretary of the SR president. Much better than her little department manager. Ah! The old man is really partial to this mistress's daughter. Li Yun's cold gaze startled the receptionist. This eldest lady of the Li family, how come her facial features have become so distorted? It's nothing like the rumors. Is this, really the most beautiful woman in the imperial capital? When she was full of doubts, Li Yun suddenly glanced at her coldly, making her feel like she was being stared at by a poisonous snake. However, the next second, she snorted coldly, turned around and left. Snap dash. The document was slammed on the table. Li Hong, who was working, looked up and saw Li Yun's angry look, and couldn't help asking, what's wrong, Yun'er? Li Yun's little face immediately became aggrieved. Dad, I just met my sister when I went to SR to discuss cooperation. What? Li Hong was surprised, and then frowned tightly. Why is she in SR? Shouldn't she be in school? Li Yun felt even more aggrieved when he mentioned this. They are not all grandfathers. Your grandfather? Li Hong was confused. What does this have to do with the old man? Li Yun nodded, biting his lower lip tightly, and said, Sister said, Grandpa sent her to SR to be third master's secretary. Li Hong's eyes widened instantly. You mean third master? He's not. Have you ever wanted a female secretary? Li Yun shook her head, she didn't know either. Grandpa and Mr. Chi have always had a good relationship. If he opens his mouth, I'm afraid the third master won't be able to refuse, she said. Li Hong narrowed his eyes slightly and lowered his head in thought. Seeing that he was silent, Li Yun ran to him and grabbed his arm. Dad, I just waited in SR for several hours and couldn't see the third master, but my sister, she could obviously take me to see the third master, but she made me wait. Recalling the smile Li Ju showed her before entering the elevator, Li Yun's eyes became more and more resentful. Li Hong patted her hand and comforted her. Okay, Yun'er, don't be angry. Just leave the third master alone. But Dad. Li Yun was a little unwilling. Thinking of Li Ju's face, she felt itchy with hatred. Li Hong said, Yun'er, I have my own plan. Don't worry, I won't let you be wronged. When Li Yun heard this, he could only say, okay. Be good, go ahead. Li Yun nodded, picked up the files on the table, exited the office, and closed the door. Seeing Li Yun leave, Li Hong looked away, and his face instantly darkened. He stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and looked down at the noisy traffic. Li Hong lowered his head and pondered. Things seemed to be out of his control. Originally, he had never taken Li Ju seriously. How much trouble can an illegitimate daughter cause? Even if she can please Mr. Li's favor. But in his eyes, these are just tricks used by Li Ju to stay in the Li family. But now, Li Ju surprised him too much. Not only do I know Mr. N. She was actually able to get the old man to send her to SR to be Chi Jinkai's personal secretary. There is no better way to know a father than a son. How could he not know Mr. Li's true purpose? It is nothing more than wanting Li Ju and Chi Jinkai to study hard. Learn how to run a company. Then what? Li Hong clenched his hands into fists and slammed them on the floor-to-ceiling window. Come back and steal the company from him. End of this chapter.